Hi there, everyone. We wanted to go over documenting initial inquiries and how to handle phone calls whenever a potential participant calls and needs assistance. It's your office, or maybe it's your cell phone that they call, whatever method in which they try to get a hold of you, even if it's just a walk-in. We want to cover the basics on how to engage with these potential participants, and also how to make sure that they follow through to the next step and get the information that is needed so that you can make the proper referrals. This is an important feature for our administrative assistants to know, but also many of you, even as case managers, get phone calls on a regular basis, people just cold calling, needing help. And so I feel like this would be beneficial to any of you. It's going to be short because it's not a lot of material. In your book, it is chapter 14. However, the process that they use is very, very, very different from how we would like you to handle initial inquiries. And so we're probably not even going to make you read that chapter. You're welcome to look through it if you're just interested. But this will actually cover the training on how to document initial inquiries. So first off, always be prepared when you answer the phone as to how you answer the phone. It's just customer service 101 about, making sure that you are engaged and not doing other things while you're talking to someone. And making sure that they know that you're listening, that they can tell over the phone if you're listening or not, and if you care immediately. And the whole point in an initial conversation is to get that potential participant, the person that called you, to whatever next step it is that they need to make. And that, of course, needs to be determined through your conversation. And so a lot of times we know that people may call for something very, very specific, like my electricity is about to be shut off, or I'm getting evicted from my house, or I have nowhere to sleep tonight and I need a motel. So they might be very urgent and have a very specific need that they're trying to bring forward to you. And what you're trying to do is get them to engage in holistic case management if they are eligible for that through 100 Families. And if not, get them to someone else who can help them. So those are kind of your two options. And so I was going to just show you a referral spreadsheet really quickly. And this is one from Sebastian. I know that all of our counties do different referral spreadsheets. I think this is very important. Until we get this in Hope Hub, it's very important that it is documented who has called and who they were referred by, if they have children or not. These are just the kinds of questions you need to know so that you can to make the appropriate next steps. Obviously, if they don't have any children whatsoever, maybe they're an older grandmother, no children live with them, and they have heard about you and that you provide rent assistance or something. Well, obviously, that is not someone that would qualify for 100 Families, and you could then give them a resource to call that could take over from there. But you need to know this initial information. And I know everyone's spreadsheet in each county are slightly different depending on, kind of what the coordinators feel need to be known. And that's fine too. I think that is absolutely fine. I think that it's very important that you get enough information so that you can decide who is going to be the best case manager for this specific client. So like, it might be that you need to know if they're involved in district court, or it might be that you need to know whether they have an open DHS case. It's very different depending upon the area and whether the area has case managers that kind of specialize in different areas. And so you might even want to know, hey, is this a reentry client? Because maybe you have a case manager that works more with parole probation. So those are the reasons why you find out this kind of main area of concern, and then a few other questions around qualifying and things like that. Also, finding out where they are is important. I thought this was really interesting that a client had called the Fort Smith office and they were actually in Pope County. So if he had not asked that and just went ahead and set him up an appointment, then maybe a client would be driving too far to get help, or something like that. So finding out, also where they are to make sure that they're at the appropriate office, especially as we add additional counties throughout the state. I like that we document who is the first point of contact, so who answered the phone in case there's other questions. And then Paul just recently told us how important it is that we know dates of which a contact was attempted. So how many times were they attempted to be reached, how many times were they gotten a hold of and made an appointment and then they didn't show or whatever. That's important information because it gives a very thorough history of your attempts. And if anybody ever asks, and we've had that happen, we've had clients, try to say, hey, I tried to call and then I called again and nobody ever followed back up with me. And we would be able to say, we did follow back up, and it's not like we were trying to prove them wrong. It's just that we need others to trust us that we really are doing, our due diligence. Like, we don't just let people fall through the cracks. We really are reaching back out. And so that's important. And then the family can be assigned to a specific case manager, a first appointment date scheduled, and then there needs to be further notes. We need to continue to document whether or not that family followed through with the appointment. Obviously, if they're in Hope Hub, then we know that has happened, but if not, we need to know that there's been this continuous attempt. Sarah, do you have anything to add about other county referral spreadsheets?
So there's several, ways you can do it. Pulaski County actually has a referral form that they share with partners, such as DCFS or the Child Welfare Agency, where they actually, can fill out the form. It's on Google form, and then it just populates a spreadsheet for them, and then they're able to keep up with all of that information that Karen went over there on that spreadsheet. But the information about the client's name and who referred them and all that stuff's populated by the person who filled out the form. So that's worked out nicely for Pulaski County. But I think what's key is just having flexibility, as you saw from, the Sebastian County example. Each client had a different initial contact. Some had maybe called the office and talked with the administrative assistant. Some, had gotten a hold of, had come through one of the case managers or the coordinator. So you have to be flexible and not just rigid in your approach that, the client has to call the office to get an appointment set up. No, we need to be more flexible than that because, of course, any barrier, we want to reduce barriers to clients getting connected to us. So being rigid is just adding barriers to the client receiving services. And that could result in the client getting frustrated and just deciding, you know what, I don't want to deal with these people. I'm not even going to bother. So I think that's key, is just to have, flexibility, and that documentation is so key. Like Karen said, another approach that's used in White County because they are in so many different courts within the county, is that they actually put the clients who they've met in court into Hope Hub before their initial appointment. They put them in Hope Hub as soon as they meet them in court. Of course, they don't do the whole assessment in court. There's not time for that. But they go ahead and put them in the system so that they can keep up with the attempted contacts and notes in the system. And that has come in quite handy when, especially when they need to report back to the court about what happened with that client, and they can see the number of attempted contacts and, tell the full story to the judge and the rest of the, court officials. So that's another option. We are hoping to build out a more robust way to have a pending client status in Hope Hub, we just made the switch 3 days ago. And so so they can build that out and do that within the system. And so we're hoping to get that out eventually. I make no promises. It'll but by the time you're watching it, it might already be available. Who knows? But we are hoping to do that so that we can just ensure the documentation, because it has there have been situations where it's just come to light how important it is, even if we don't end up enrolling that individual for one reason or another, to have documentation about why they weren't enrolled, or did we do our due diligence to try to get them enrolled and get them contacted and get them to come in. And so it's just important to have those things documented, and you of course want to make sure no one gets overlooked. And so either doing that through the spreadsheet or putting them in Hope Hub, either way that's going to happen. We're going to make sure that people don't get overlooked. So that's super important. But yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, so a lot of times a parent may call in just having a crisis moment, and they need some help immediately in a specific area. That does not mean that they don't have multiple areas of need and multiple areas of crisis. And so I like to always train our administrative assistants and anyone who answers the phone to really try their best to get that family to come in for an appointment. Because bottom line is, you may give them a phone number to a resource, and that resource may be out of funds, and then that particular participant that falls through the cracks, because you may have known about 5 resources, but you weren't going to tell them 5 different ones over the phone. I mean, and you would probably, because you're a good case manager, you primary provider, you would go over and over and over again, trying to make phone calls and find them the assistance that they need, and getting to the root issue of why they need that assistance. Like, they keep being behind on their electric every month because they don't have any income. So you're able to do so much more if you get someone in the office. I know you may actually feel bad, like, I really want to get them the help right now. And so you want to give them a phone number where you think that they can get the help. But just remember that you are helping them more if you get them in the office and you look at them holistically. You look at them as a whole person, you look at them as a whole family, and you figure out what are all the other things that they're not just telling you on the phone that need to be dealt with. And so finding a way to reel them in by them hearing how much you care and that you want to help. They need to know that. They need to feel that. They need it to be very, very clear that that's what you're there for. So definitely do that. So whenever somebody would call just like, oh, I need help with housing, I would be like, can you come in and speak with a case manager or a family advocate so that we could go over, like some different options, and then also make sure that you get connected to the right one. There's a lot of resources out there, and I just don't want you to fall through the cracks. Now, an exception to that I would say is like, oh, I'm being evicted today. I got to go pay this, rental bill. And like all of your case managers, you already know your providers, you can't get this person in until next week. So obviously in that case, I would say, okay, well, you could try this, but please, can I go ahead and make an appointment for you for next week, just in case you still have, some needs at that point, or so that we can continue to talk about other ways that we can help you. I think it's really important that all of us are always wanting to try to help people and not just get them off the phone because we're busy. And I don't think that, any of y'all are doing that, but I do understand being busy. I do understand that completely. And I understand that sometimes it's just like you've got so many things and you're like, oh, maybe I can't get them in for a week. So I'm just going to, try to get them off the phone as quick as possible. And let's try to not do that. That's what I would try to say to you, is that that most of these families, the sad thing that I see is that I'll hear, a month later, I'll see like they've posted on Facebook that they have some horrible problem going on in their family. And I'm like, wait a minute, did you call 100 families? Yes, I did. But they said they don't have any money right now. Like, but that's not all we do, And so I just want to make sure that you're doing what you can, and you can't always get somebody in the door, but do what you can to do that, to get them through the door. And then I think that's another way to sell that is like if they have a caseworker, a child welfare case that's open, they may have a specific need that they're asking you about because they have a child welfare case open, but you can do so much more for them than just meet that one need, especially when it comes to a child welfare case. So what I always like to say, if somebody called me and I found out they had a child welfare case, is I was like, I want to help you meet all the requirements of your case plan. I want to help you get through that. I want to help you get, reunited with your children as fast as possible. And so please, come in and we can talk through everything that you need to get done and figure out a plan to get through that. And so anyway, just as much as you can, reel the people into the office, because that's where you can really build a bond. And we know that's what it's all about, is relationship building. And it's hard to relationship build on the phone. So if you can at least build enough rapport so that you can get someone in the office, that's always good.
Yeah, that was so great. I just wrote down a couple of points that I wanted to add to those. And I think what Karen, described is just reminds me and portrays how important admin assistants are, or receptionists, whatever you want to call it. All of us on this call, and I know many of you know what it's like not to have a receptionist or an admin. And it makes it so hard to sound, welcoming on the phone call, because you're like, I already have a caseload of 70 clients. I can't take another one, and I'm having to respond to these phone calls. It's a lot. And so, I think now at this time, currently, we do have administrative assistants in each of our locations, I believe. And I'm hopeful that, we won't ever have to go without, because it is just that crucial of a role. And I think that the other chapters that we went through, hey, Paul, welcome on. The other chapters that we went through prior to this give other tips, all of those communication tips that we've been talking about for the past, months, however long you've been going through this training, those all come in handy from that initial interaction with the client. And those are all skills that you want to, pull out of your back pocket and use in that initial inquiry. And just to Karen's point about assessing clients and needing them to come in to fully assess them, that just reminded me of, I think, something we've talked about previously in previous chapters, about how it's not our role as what we call case managers or primary providers to assess a client, for instance, for mental health or for a recovery need. So just in the same way, it is not the right time or appropriate to do that assessment on the initial inquiry. You just don't have enough information to assess the clients fully in 13 or 14 care areas holistically. And so I just thought that may be a good portrayal or example of, like, we really need to get clients in, or even if you're doing, I know sometimes you have to do over the phone intakes when that's absolutely necessary. It's obviously not preferred, but at least having that time set aside, 30 minutes to an hour, to really fully assess the client for their needs is so crucial. You can't base that off of an initial phone call. So now the only thing that may determine whether or not you would serve that client, whether or not you should set them up for an appointment, of course, would be whether they are eligible for your services, and whether you can, justify eligibility. But like we've talked about before, I believe, even if they're not eligible, you want to really it's your role to hand them off smoothly to another provider that you know of who they would be eligible to work with, and making that handoff is your role. And that involves even following up with that partner agency, letting them know, hey, this person called, here's their contact information, here's their situation, and asking them to reach out to that person. So that even if the client doesn't qualify for the services you're receiving, your duty really is at least to hand them off and find someone who they would qualify to work with.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Brian, did you have anything to add?
One quick point. This is a soft skill tip. What Karen and Sarah have been talking about is something we talked about before, and a skill that you need to develop, and it's active listening. Remember, in active listening, as human beings, we're often self-centered when we hear and when we speak, but in active listening, you're engaging the client so that you can stir up within them what their issue is, not what your agenda is, but what their issue is. And as Sarah said, and Kara, getting the right information from them is going to be helpful. Even if you don't provide direct services now, that information can be handed off to a service provider that can help them, but they're not going to be able to do that at the highest level if we haven't listened very closely to what their need is. That's just a tip for you.
That's great. Paul, did you have anything to add? document is what he told us to leave y'all with. And that's just regarding those return phone calls particularly, and any missed appointments. And then of course, always contacting the original referral source to let them know that they haven't come in for an appointment. That sometimes helps. And of course, also contacting the referral source if there is a phone number that that has changed. It's not going through anymore or whatever, then contacting the original referral source. It's very likely that they may have the new phone number. And so we don't want anybody falling through the cracks. And that's the bottom line, is that we want to help as many people as we possibly can. And I loved how Sarah brought up the removing of barriers and being flexible. That is so important. So whenever you are talking to someone over the phone about that very first appointment and setting it up and saying, can you come in on Friday at 2? Finding out a little bit more information, like, is 2 o'clock, a good time for you? Because do you have to pick up your kids at 3, or do you have transportation to get here? Those are very important questions, because I can tell you right now that most people, when they talk to you, the initial call, they have every intention on following through and being there. And they want to so badly at that point that they're willing to look past all their barriers and just say, yeah, I'll figure it out. But that's not what, we want. We want to help them figure it out. And so if there's a better time or a better place or a better something that we can provide to help them get there, then we just need to know it. And so you've got to ask the right questions to be able to do that. So we appreciate you guys so much. We just thank you. Every person is so important to this process. If you're on the front lines, then you are the ones that are making sure that people don't fall through the cracks. And that is commendable. We appreciate you so much.